Welcome to episode 7 of the Zech Support Legal Study series. Today, we'll be talking about a topic that could very well get this channel banned on YouTube. But we have to try anyway. So here's hoping we survive this episode with today's topic: rape and other sex offenses. Are we still here? Okay, good. Sex offenses, particularly rape, carry deep legal and social significance. The conversation surrounding these crimes has evolved tremendously over time, but many legal complexities remain. In this episode, we will explore the historical and modern definitions of rape, the role of consent, key legal cases, and the impact of rape shield laws. This discussion will be handled with the utmost sensitivity and respect for the gravity of this subject. So why does society care so much about rape? Why is rape such a heavily legislated and emotionally charged issue? At its core, laws against rape protect an individual's fundamental right to personal autonomy. The right to control one's own body is a cornerstone of human rights. The decision to engage in sexual relations is one of the most intimate choices a person can make, and any violations of that choice is seen as an extreme breach of personal sovereignty. Historically, legal systems have evolved to reflect changing societal understandings of bodily autonomy and consent. However, challenges remain. Many victims face stigma, disbelief, and barriers to justice due to outdated notions about victim behavior, consent, and the role of resistance. We will explore these themes as we discuss the evolution of rape laws and their modern applications, starting with common law versus modern definitions of rape. Under common law, rape was defined as carnal knowledge of a woman forcibly and against her will. The elements of this definition included sexual intercourse, including even the slightest vaginal penetration, a male perpetrator and a female victim, notably excluding spousal rape, a lack of consent, the victim had to actively resist, use of force or threat of force, physical evidence was often required. Beyond these elements, common law imposed strict evidentiary requirements. The victim had to demonstrate utmost resistance. Corroborating evidence was required beyond the victim's testimony. The victim had to report the assault immediately under the fresh complaint rule. Evidence of the victim's past sexual history was admissible in court. These stringent requirements made rape cases extremely difficult to prosecute and often discouraged victims from coming forward. Fast forward now to modern law, and we have seen significant changes. In the 20th century, legal reforms led to an updated definition of rape: sexual intercourse by a man with a woman not his wife, without her consent, effectuated by force or threat of force. Spousal rape was still largely unrecognized in early reforms, but has since been criminalized in most jurisdictions. The requirement for utmost resistance was largely abandoned, and courts began to focus more on lack of consent rather than physical resistance. Modern statutes, such as California Penal Code Section 261, define rape as an act of sexual intercourse committed under specific non-consensual conditions. Legal elements of rape today. Using California law as an example, the key elements of rape include incapacity to consent. If a person is mentally, developmentally, or physically incapacitated, and the perpetrator knows or should reasonably know, consent is legally impossible. Force or threat of force. The use of physical force, violence, duress, menace, or fear of harm invalidates any perceived consent. Intoxication or drugging. If the victim is prevented from resisting due to alcohol, anesthetics, or controlled substances, and the perpetrator knows or should reasonably know, then rape has occurred. Unconsciousness. If the victim is unconscious or unaware of the act's occurrence, the act is non-consensual. Fraud and deception. If the perpetrator uses fraud to deceive the victim into believing the act serves as a legitimate purpose, for example, medical treatment, consent is invalid. Threats of retaliation. If the victim submits due to threat of future harm, threats of kidnapping, false imprisonment, or bodily injury, the act constitutes rape. Abuse of authority. If the perpetrator uses their position of power such as falsely claiming to be a law enforcement officer to coerce the victim, consent is considered invalid. Let's briefly go over a couple of case studies. Case number 1, People v. Ireland, 2010. The defendant was convicted of 4 counts of forcible rape under Penal Code 261A2. The victim initially consented to sex for money, but later withdrew consent when threatened with a knife. The court held that use of a weapon and coercion automatically negated prior consent. Should prior consent be a legal defense? Should withdrawal of consent be explicitly communicated? Case number 2, People v. Barnes, 1986. The victim knew the defendant personally. The defendant used intimidation and psychological coercion to force submission. The court ruled that lack of measurable resistance is irrelevant to proving rape. Moving on to rape shield laws. One of the most significant advancements in legal protection for victims is rape shield laws. These laws prohibit introducing a victim's past sexual history as evidence in most cases. It prevents victim-blaming tactics used by defense attorneys, and it ensures trials focused on the crime itself rather than unrelated aspects of the victim's character. In conclusion, as rape laws continue to evolve, misconceptions about resistance, consent, and coercion will persist. Education is the key to ensuring justice is served. If you or someone you know is a victim of sexual assault, seek legal and professional support. Resources are available for survivors. That's the end of today's episode. Thank you for tuning in. Stay informed, stay on the right side of the law, and let's hope we don't get demonetized today. As always, when you need help, you can always call on Zech Support.